Night falls, and with it, the ghosts of the past return to haunt me. Beneath the cold moon, where shadows play sinister games, lurks a black market, a place of dark deals. And in the midst of this kingdom of darkness, shrouded in fear, sits a lonely slave. Look carefully, for this is me, chained in my past existence. What if it all ends in an instant, in a crimson whirlwind of pain and blood? But I fell. Death took me, leaving only ashes on the lifeless earth. But even in this silent fall, a spark of something new flashed. And here I am again, though stained by the past, but with a glimmer of hope in my eyes. Suddenly he appears like a ray of light, extending a helping hand. With his gesture, he offers not just salvation, but also a path to a new life full of change. I followed him, climbing the steps towards an unknown future, leaving behind the shackles and suffering. As time went on, I learned, became stronger, and immersed myself in the world of knowledge and self-improvement. Thus, the slave turned into a warrior, his gaze full of determination, and every step, confidence. But fate is fickle, and now we are transported to the present, where another hero is enjoying the moment. Suddenly, this serene peace is broken by a flash of irritation. The tension mounts, and words fly like sparks, igniting an argument. What's going on? One of them is trying to calm the other down, while the other is hysterical. He asks an important question, as if trying to bring his friend to his senses. Do you know what awaits you? And he explains that in the world of streamers, not being famous means being nobody. But the second one, without losing heart, replies, the main thing is talent, not empty chatter, and immediately proves it with his stream. Talent begins the stream by demonstrating his game sense, an intuitive understanding of the game that allows him to make lightning-fast tactical decisions. He doesn't just act, but also captivates the audience with his lively humor, turning every victory into an unforgettable show. While his friend despairingly realizes that behind every successful stream, there is titanic work, video editing, and countless hours at the computer. And even if you put everything you have into it, the risk of failing, of going unnoticed, with a ton of dislikes and 0 viewers, is enormous. Our hero listens, his arms crossed gravely, his face reflecting his understanding of these harsh realities of the industry. His friend looks at him, trying to figure out if there is another path to success. And he asks himself, isn't skill alone enough to get to the top? He just smiles mysteriously, as if he has an ace up his sleeve. And he explains, actually, there is a way, and it's one. To become better than the greatest of the greats, the #1 player in Korea, a star more popular than any celebrity. Shin Ha-young. Our hero is stunned, but a spark flashes in his eyes. After all, he once had considerable experience in capsule games. It's just that it was a long time ago. His friend, however, seems to think he's crazy, looking at him with a playful squint. But the time for words is over. It's time for action, and he calls on his friend to join in. He takes care of all the organizational matters, pointing to the virtual reality capsule. And our hero accepts the challenge, a confident smile full of anticipation playing on his lips. It's a deal, he says, and there's an unwavering determination in his voice. The capsule, as if anticipating a new era, comes to life with a quiet buzz, preparing to dive. He dives into it, preparing for a new stage, the stage of streaming, which will change everything. And here we have the character creation screen. Jin Seo-jun, without hours of play, from scratch. But on Jin Seo-jun's face, immersed in the virtual world, there was not just anticipation, but something more. After all, we all start not with what comes easy, but with what requires incredible effort, forming our true essence. And so, in that moment, words of instruction about courage and limitless potential flashed like a bright light inside him, promising a quick breakthrough. He felt himself in a new, unfamiliar space, the air of which was saturated with ancient wisdom and the radiance of the distant future. But before the realization fully dawned on him, a system notification announced the arrival of his companion, Kim Tae-woo, at the mysterious training ground. He was already waiting with a slight smile, welcoming him into this virtual refuge where realities and illusions were intertwined into one. And while Jin Seo-jun was trying to get his bearings, his friend explained that they were in a special game location created for honing skills. Here they had to face the perfect artificial intelligence in order to overcome their own limits and set new, unimaginable records. At first, Jin wanted to challenge Tae-woo himself, but he laughed it off and handed him a training sword, explaining that his true opponent was waiting ahead. And at that very moment, a holographic window appeared in front of Seo-jun, revealing a complex system of grading the strength of virtual fighters. It showed that the AI here was not simple, having 10 levels of complexity, each of which became increasingly powerful until it reached the highest, the 10th level. And at the top of this pyramid of power, imitating a human fighter with incredible skill, a certain Shin Hayoung had reigned supreme for 5 years. Tu merely confirmed that reaching his level is a task only a few can achieve, and the path to it is strewn with thousands of defeats. With a slight grin, Tu watched as Jin Seojun, without a second's hesitation, reached for the coveted button, accepting the call. One touch, and the platform beneath his feet lit up, heralding the imminent appearance of an invincible enemy. An imposing figure materialized in the air, a training droid whose appearance radiated unshakable power, signaling the start of the duel. Tu, surprised by his friend's self-confidence, whispered with a sly laugh, "Did you skip all the initial levels and rush straight into battle with the best?" But there was no time to think. The droid with lightning speed rushed into the attack, not giving a single chance to hesitate. Jin Seojun met his strike, his sword flashing blue, reflecting the attack and displaying unexpected strength. Watching this, Tu only shook his head, still not believing his friend's recklessness, but a glimmer of pride flashed in his eyes. And Seojun, parrying another attack, only grinned, challenging not only the AI, but the very concept of the impossible. In response to his insolence, the droid struck again, its fist glowing red, heralding a fierce battle. A red storm crashed down on Seojun, but he dodged it like a ghost, only parrying the attack. The next moment, his blade cut through the air with a blue glow, like lightning in the night. The droid staggered, its mechanical body malfunctioning, and its life bar noticeably shortening. Seojun looked at it in disbelief. Was it just luck? But Seojun didn't give the AI time to come to its senses. His gaze was sharp. Every movement was precise. A flash of blue light. And now the AI, trying to counterattack, again runs into an insurmountable defense. Metal scraped against metal. The droid's hand was knocked off before it could reach its target. And Seojun, increasing his pace with each passing second, unleashed a new, crushing blow on his opponent. The droid's body couldn't withstand the impact. The limb shattered into thousands of pixels, dooming it to fall. It was too fast, too unexpected. The witness froze in shock, unable to hold back a cry. The battered and crippled droid fell to one knee, its systems flickering chaotically. Seojun casually stepped on the debris, asserting his victory over the soulless machine. One last glitch, one last click, and the light in the AI's eyes went out forever. Seojun stood over his fallen opponent, a slight but confident smile playing on his lips. The droid systems finally failed, its body enveloped in an ominous red light, and the car crumbled in agony, leaving behind only shimmering fragments. The ancient hall fell silent, and only debris lay on the floor, a silent testimony to triumph. A system message appeared before Seojun's eyes. Level 9 Duel 1, rank 107. What? Level 9? He beat a level 9 bot, the stunned observer exclaimed. But Seojun was already looking ahead, where the scarlet lines of the floor pointed the way to the next, even more formidable test. The energy pulses again and digital patterns come to life in the arena. The silhouette of a new, mysterious opponent slowly emerges before Seojun. This is her, Shin Hayoung, one of the most formidable models, radiating a cold glow. Even Seojun is surprised by this, a heavy breath escaping his chest. The observer does not take his eyes off the monitor, trying to understand what made the director take such a step. At this time, within the walls of the corporation, the assistant looks at her boss in bewilderment. "Free rent for him? For God's sake, director, are you serious?" she exclaims. In her opinion, it was too generous a gesture for someone like Seojun. He's not on the elite list of participants, so why does he get such privileges? "I simply cannot stand by and watch such talent go to waste," the director replies with a gentle smile. "Talent?" the assistant asks, her eyebrows raised in surprise. The director recalls his old data, where synchronization was only 10%, but faith in him did not fade. And now she sees how much his skills have grown, and she senses something great. Yes, he might not even make it into the chosen ones, the assistant agrees, acknowledging the harsh reality. But if he suddenly shows himself, if he succeeds, the director says, her gaze full of anticipation, then he will be able to defeat anyone, and all his powers will be in his hand. At this moment, the ringing of blades resounds across the arena again, merging with the roar of battle. Seojun parries the furious blow, blinding sparks lighting up the battlefield. The observer freezes, amazed by what he sees. Is he really going to win? Seojun smirked, determination burning in his eyes. If so, I'll show them some real class. His confidence knew no bounds, because he was up against the legendary Shin Hayoung. But Shin Hayoung herself only smiled mysteriously, as if anticipating his every step. In the guise of a fearsome fighter in shining armor, she was the embodiment of strength beyond anyone he knew, including myself, flashed through his thoughts. This will be a test. A sudden cry from his friend pulled him out of his thoughts, demanding an explanation. The red background flashed as the silhouette of the swordsman knocked down his opponent, both landing on the ground. The friend only sighed resignedly, apparently already anticipating the continuation of this strange game. The question hung in the air. How could you even defeat Shin Ha-young if you were so careless? Sojin slowly drew his sword, as if anticipating something, while the blade glowed softly. But instead of attacking, he simply dropped it, and the sword slid across the floor with a light ringing sound. Shin Ha-young stood at a respectful distance, and Sojin only muttered that the pain was an illusion. Yes, virtual reality allowed him to take damage without feeling the consequences. Just don't tell me that you... Horror was reflected in his friend's eyes. You intentionally got yourself in trouble? He exclaimed. Just curiosity, Seojin replied, shrugging. The next moment, the armored fighter prepared to attack again, surrounded by flashes of energy. She dropped gracefully to one knee, the sword rising into the air, raising clouds of dust around it. A red light flashed in her visor as she lunged forward, her blade cutting through the air. A powerful blue strike that distorted space fell on Sojin. Her cold gaze met his confident one, as if foreshadowing the outcome, and then everything around exploded into a blinding golden glow, engulfing the fighter's figure. On the brink of this outbreak, only his determined gaze pierced the chaos. But the enemy did not flinch, only flashed in response, like a mirror, reflecting the blow. In an instant, his optical visor distorted, absorbing the force of the crushing blow. The hero watched, his eyes like a predator awaiting the next move. And then, as if on command, the robot rushed forward, delivering a counterattack, piercing the air with a blade of light. A blue vortex of energy collided with his body, throwing the protagonist back with stunning force. Every movement is a well-honed program. Every blow is a verified precision, forcing the enemy to retreat. A number flashed on his visor, indicating damage, but it only seemed to spur him on. Is that all? A cold voice rang out as the hero staggered and lost his balance, but a fire lit up his eyes, and he made a decision. Then I'll show you what a real fight is. With incredible speed like lightning, he delivered a series of crushing blows, bringing down a flurry of blades on the enemy. The air crackled with the clash of steel and energy, sparks dancing in the epicenter of the battle. Every touch of the blade echoed with an electric discharge, foreshadowing the inevitable outcome. Off to the side, one of the observers couldn't help but let out a cry of amazement as he realized the scale of what was happening. The robot's blade couldn't withstand the force, shattering into thousands of pieces like ice under attack. Thrown back by the force, the mechanical warrior fell, his movement frozen in silent agony. The hero, with a slight smile on his lips, watched his defeated enemy. And then the final blow sounded, leaving the robot sitting on the ground, his head bowed. Perhaps another 80 years of hard training, and you will come close to my strength, he said, returning the blade to its sheath. But even in defeat, the robot's system continued to analyze, studying every aspect of the battle, remembering every mistake. The victory was undeniable, but there was a feeling in the air that this was only the beginning. His opponent, shocked by Shin Ha-eun's strength, could hardly believe his eyes. Ha-eun himself, assessing his new abilities, was already thinking about the next step, the world of streaming. A new day dawned on the city, bringing with it a sense of anticipation of the unknown. But before conquering virtual worlds, the most mundane tasks awaited. Even in everyday life, challenges awaited him, even if they were as minor as perfectly cooked noodles. Fines and reminders from the omnipresent AI have become part of his daily routine, maintaining order. An unexpected sharp sound pierced the silence of the room. His gaze fell on the futuristic capsule in which he had installed the game. It's time to take the next step. Register and prepare for your first stream. He sank into the capsule, closing his eyes in anticipation of a new experience. And then his gaze opened wide, meeting an unfamiliar reality. He found himself in a spacious, sparkling hall where the air vibrated. What is this? Where am I? Flashed through his mind as holographic screens appeared around him. The answer was not long in coming, appearing before him in the form of a system message. It was the game lobby, a place where streamers interact with viewers, getting ready for the upcoming broadcast. He noted to himself that he would later take care of arranging his virtual space. But now something else was more important. The launch of the first stream on the Travel platform. Travel is the world's largest streaming platform, and its doors are now open to him. From now on, he had one goal: to gain a reputation and enter the elite list. Travel is the world's largest streaming platform, and its doors are now open to him. From now on, he had one goal: to build a reputation and join the elite list. The item he acquired, despite its apparent simplicity, gained incredible popularity among users. And for him, it became the key, the ideal tool for starting a new journey. Under cover of night, at the peak of a majestic tower, he challenged the heights. The hook pierced the stone, clinging securely to the ledge, a harbinger of his ascent. The next moment, deftly controlling his body, he soared upward, dissolving into the shadows. Every movement was measured, every grab precise, until his hand landed on the cold parapet. And now he was standing at the top, where the wind played with his cloak and the moon illuminated the path. Like echoes of the distant past, the chimes announced the arrival of a new hour. Below him lay a shining city, a world full of opportunity and hidden threats, a deep breath mixing with the cold night air and determination in the eyes. Well then, shall we begin? He silently asked himself and the whole world. His broadcast began with a question familiar to newcomers, but one that concealed a clever trick. Meanwhile, his enthusiastic friend promised him success, not knowing the true strength of the newbie. After all, behind the mask of an inexperienced streamer lurked someone much more formidable. His gaze turned again to the city, to the details that ordinary players missed. Every element of this world, from the people passing by to the architecture, was drawn with incredible care. There was a smile on his face, the smile of a man anticipating a real adventure, and his step across the roof was light but confident, carrying with it a premonition of something important. "Danny, this mission could be deadly," came a warning voice from the past. Dennis understands that the words he hears do not belong to the real world. They are just part of the program. He looks at the poster, seeing the name of the assassin squad and his new name, realizing that he has become part of a much more complex game. But the woman standing next to him does not seem to share his detachment. Her gaze is full of anxiety, and he, with a slight grin, utters words full of the cruel wisdom of the world of murderers, which she has not yet comprehended. She just closes her eyes, accepting this merciless truth like an old wound. Then, calmly showing her the way, he sends her to the tavern, where his part of the mission awaits. In her hand is a folded piece of paper, containing something important that will connect their destinies. And the final warning echoing in the air, "Trust no one," like the testament of their bloody craft. The same grin appears on his face as before, heralding the beginning of a deadly game. He adjusts the invisible blade, and his eyes glow gold, confirming that in this world, even chaos can be deceptive. The world around him distorts as he rushes forward, turning into a blurry shadow. The blow falls on an invisible barrier, splitting the space around it. And now he lands, barely touching the ground, enveloped in an aura of power. His eyes burn with determination, like two balls of flame focused on an invisible target. Suddenly, everything freezes, and the system's voice announces the completion of automatic learning, breaking him out of his trance. He tries to move on, but the way is blocked, and a slight displeasure appears on his face. Then the inscription on the screen offers a new way out, to climb up the pipes that lead somewhere upward. He looks up, assessing the task, and excitement flashes in his eyes. A firm grip, and now he's clinging to the cold metal, beginning his ascent. Surprise is reflected on his face when he realizes that his body moved on its own, as if obeying long-forgotten instincts. He has just completed his studies, but his head is already filled with new thoughts. The new mission objective emerges before him, clear and unambiguous. Eliminate Atori. Kill a man sounds so ordinary when you are part of this game, this new world. The map that shows the way confirms that this is not just a game, but an entire system ready to lead you by the hand. Here it is, the path down, to a new goal, to new challenges. Repelling demonstrates that even the simplest actions here require a certain amount of skill, but an inner voice whispers, provoking one to take risks, to test the boundaries of what is permitted. Why drag it out when you can just jump? A decisive gesture, and the rope is left behind. Free flight lasts only a moment. A hard landing quickly brings him back to reality, forcing him to reconsider his tactics. The gaze slides over the interface, trying to understand the cause of the error. Forgotten viewers remind him of themselves with a stream of comments, mercilessly ridiculing his blunder. And this number, although modest, gives an unexpected feeling of success, a light joy. Did the title really help? Flashes through his mind as he sees the first 4 spectators. Nicknames like absurd jokes distract from the essence, but he senses some hidden meaning in them. His thoughts drift to Tevu's instructions. "Don't look at the numbers," Tevu told him. "The most important thing is interaction," Tevu's inner voice repeats. He recalls the words of Tevu, who claimed that it is communication, not the mass appeal, that attracts people to streamers. Tevu decides to heed the advice and first try to communicate with his small audience. Viewers immediately notice his inexperience by checking the account's creation date. And Tevu, with disarming candor, admits he's a newbie. Even basic settings seem like an impossible task to him, causing laughter among the audience, but the call to return to the quest quickly brings him to his senses. Meanwhile, a blood moon rises over a gothic mansion shrouded in a mystical aura, foreshadowing trials to come. Tevu quickly reaches his destination, and comments from viewers are quick to come, highlighting the ominous atmosphere around him. He wonders how to get inside and almost rushes in, but vigilant spectators remind him of the note from Christina. Remembering her existence, Tevu takes out a neatly folded piece of paper that could be the key to the mystery. The note contains a map of the second floor and a direction to Atori's location, in the bedroom. But what about the weapons? Suddenly his fist is enveloped in a glow, and a metal glove materializes on his hand. Along with the glove comes a stiletto, standard equipment for beginners, and Tevu accepts his mission with cold determination: to kill Atori. Just one look at the weapon is enough to sense its potential. Inspired, Tevu rushes into battle, but the audience, knowing his inexperience, tries to stop the reckless newcomer. His incomprehension knows no bounds, and the audience, with undisguised irritation, points to the unfinished reading of the note. While some are ready to abandon him to his fate, others are desperately trying to save him from imminent death, seeing the enemy approaching. He looks at the gate in bewilderment, asking why he can't just walk in, but then an intriguing term pops up: fighter style. There's a threat lurking behind the gates. Show your face and you'll be surrounded by a crowd of enemies. Only the most seasoned veterans dare to break through the central entrance, killing everyone in their path, which arouses admiration and horror among observers. Tevu understands that this is the legendary fighter style, but he is immediately told that training in this way is a practically impossible task. Even the hardcore players of the community couldn't overcome this challenge. But a subtle, devilish smile flickers across Tevu's face. The name mentioned, Shin Hayoung, only fuels his excitement, and Tewu takes a decisive step. The smile widens. Well, let's test this impossible challenge for strength. Through the crimson twilight, under an ominous moon, he approaches an ancient mansion where deathly silence reigns. The air here is thick with alien presence, with centuries of pressure. But his gaze burns only with anticipation of battle. Viewers watching his stream are not shy about making caustic comments and betting on his imminent death. He just laughs, because every new viewer who comes to watch the noob is already a small victory. For now, the crowd doesn't cross the line of what is acceptable, and Tevu continues on his way, stepping on the old cobblestones. Soon the path is blocked by two massive figures in shining armor, the guards of this eerie abode. One of the knights raises his sword, demanding to be identified, but Tevu only meets him with a sly grin. The chat continues to mock him, predicting instant reprisal, but Tevu is already ready to play. The knight does not wait for an answer. His sword whistles through the air, falling on the uninvited guest. But the next moment, there is a screeching sound of metal, and Tevu blocks the blow with astonishing ease. A lightning-fast counterattack, and the knight, having received damage, falls lifelessly to the ground. The screen flashes again with messages, this time full of disbelief and surprise. The newbie was able to parry. He looks at his staff as if in disbelief, and then finishes off the fallen enemy with another powerful blow. There's a slight bewilderment in his eyes. Are these legendary guards really that weak? The second knight, seething with rage, rushes into the attack, but his blow is also met by Tevu with a flawless parry. The spectators are amazed by his luck, or perhaps his hidden skill, and advise him to buy a lottery ticket. Another blow and blood stains the cobblestones, marking the end of the second guard. The chat is once again buzzing about luck, but Tevu looks around in confusion. What kind of luck are they even talking about? Amidst the chat's outraged cries of pure luck, Tevu calmly confirms that he knows perfectly well what a parry is. These senseless arguments around him only increase his irritation, because they all throw words around so frivolously. The blood moon looks down upon this world with indifference, painting the horizon with harbingers of trouble. Finally, someone decides to explain that a parry is a precise block that stuns the opponent, and even those who were previously at the peak often fail to cope with this task, adds the worried companion. Shadows of the past flash through my memory, where skillful parrying was the preserve of only a few. He repeats again, it's not just luck, it's intuition, lightning-fast reactions, and anticipation of every move of the enemy. Tevu nods briefly, and the chat seems to be losing patience, urging him to finally settle down. Otherwise, everything will be really bad. comes another warning, but he just remains silent, looking somewhere downwards. Why should it be bad if everything is so simple? His smug grin sparks a new wave of indignation, where everyone considers him just an upstart. But then Assassin Jojo intervenes, firmly declaring that these moves are not luck, but something much more. Tevu is slightly surprised, feeling that someone has finally seen the truth. However, the crowd only buzzes louder, unwilling to acknowledge the obvious, and continues to insist on its own. Tevu's companion only sighs heavily, realizing how easy it is to fall under this barrage of misunderstanding. Pictures of the past come back to life in his memory, where he, not belonging to any great sect, was always an object of ridicule. But now his eyes burn with a different fire, a flame of determination and new strength. Yes, everything has changed now, but the true essence remains the same. It is a battle for recognition, and now a new obstacle appears before him. A squad of guards, menacingly demanding that he stop, but his hand is already gripping the handle, and in his eyes there is only firm confidence in the next blow. His gaze pierces the air, full of tension and anticipation of the fight. A lightning-fast swing and the guard's weapon flies off with a deafening, ringing sound. Metal scrapes against metal as the next blow hits its target, breaking through the defense. He dances among his enemies, his every step a deadly movement. The face remains impassive, but the eyes burn with the fire of determination. Another enemy falls without even having time to understand what happened. Around him are only the bodies of his fallen enemies, silent testimony to his skill. If you want to catch me, his voice is challenging, you'll need an entire army. But viewers in the online chat can no longer contain their admiration for his incredible skill. Relentless, he continues to deal with the rest, leaving them no chance. A short exhalation, almost imperceptible, gives only a fleeting relief. His boots step across the blood-soaked floor, past the remains of armor. Total, -6, he states with a slight hint of cynicism. The questions in the chat are mounting. Who is this newbie capable of such feats if he himself claims that he is just learning? The audience argues, not believing their eyes, while the hero himself silently watches their violent reactions. But even amidst the general admiration, there are those who dare to test his patience. One moment, and the rule violator is sent to a permanent ban, demonstrating an instant reaction. The chat explodes with praise, because with such talent, the future seems incredibly bright. Deep down, he reflects on the past, on how he tried to keep a low profile because of his roots. But true talent cannot be hidden, and even in another life, he will inevitably be renowned as a sword god. Deep down, he reflects on his past, on how he tried to keep a low profile because of his roots. But true talent cannot be hidden, and even in another life, he will inevitably be celebrated as a sword god. The whining that begins about other people's problems is met with absolute indifference, interrupted only by an awkward cough. His parrying abilities aroused intense interest and involuntary suspicion, because to others it seemed like something unearthly. But for him it was all ridiculously simple, just an echo of long-forgotten skills from a past life, firmly entrenched in muscle memory. The silence in the chat only confirmed his words, although he himself was not averse to teasing those around him with his ease at times. Of course, such statements provoked a storm of indignation, because no one wanted to believe such a simple explanation of his skill. Meanwhile, reality demanded attention. Loud shouts announced his presence, and soon a whole crowd had gathered around. In the dark halls of the castle, he found himself surrounded by enemies, their swords glowing with an ominous red light, reflecting his loneliness. A smug grin flashed across his face, because for him, this was just the beginning of an exciting game. He raised his blade confidently, challenging the entire crowd, promising to show them something they would never forget. And at that moment, like a harbinger of something incredible, delicate petals began to swirl in the air. The crowd of opponents, confident in their numbers, did not see him as a threat, just a stranger who could be easily destroyed. But he stood motionless as a rock, while shadows gathered around him, ready to devour him. His gaze remained calm, full of concentration, while the world around him prepared for chaos. The first wave of blows crashed down on him from all sides, turning the air into a flurry of steel and fury. But every movement was honed to perfection. He dodged, parried every blow with incredible grace. A fire blazed in the depths of his golden eyes, reflecting the skill forged in countless battles. The spectators watching him were speechless, unable to understand how he could cope with such pressure, suspecting unearthly talent. One of the knights, enraged by his elusiveness, launched a desperate attack, trying to break through his defense. Again and again he met the blows, the blade singing as it struck the iron, creating a whirlwind of sparks in the semi-darkness. Blows rained down on him, each one potentially deadly, but met only by steely will and masterful wielding of a blade. He moved like a shadow, leaving behind only blood and destruction, his blade dancing a deadly dance, never tired. Something elusive flashed in his gaze, a slight smile, a spark of triumph in his eyes, illuminated by the flashes of battle. But suddenly the reality around him shook, as if someone had pulled invisible strings, transporting us to a completely different dimension. One of the onlookers, whose name was Jome, also known as Assassin Jozo, couldn't believe his eyes, exclaiming in shock, "What the hell? Is he just a newbie?" This same Jome, sitting at his computer surrounded by garbage bags, was not just a gamer, but an ardent fan of the acclaimed game Dawn of the Assassin Squad. The developers, announcing the principles of their creation, promised true masters of gameplay, an unprecedented challenge, but warned that the price of error would be high. Jome, who valued the art of the game above all else, was absolutely thrilled with the concept, looking forward to a great challenge. However, despite his enthusiasm, many players encountered unbearable difficulty, their efforts colliding with a wall of despair, ending in failure and a broken screen. He tried to find the perfect gameplay everywhere, exploring ruins to use the environment to his advantage. I studied the routes of the targets in order to arrange explosive surprises for them, searching for that very divine strategy. He spent hours waiting in ambush, agonizingly awaiting the appearance of his target, while other players in the chat were perplexed by his stubbornness. Because of this, Jome often fell asleep right at the table, exhausted by fruitless attempts, helplessly admitting, "This is damn hard." But now, suddenly everything changed. The tension in the air became electric, foreshadowing something grand. He stumbled upon a stream of an unknown player, and his eyes lit up. Here it was, the virtuoso gameplay he'd been waiting for. The game he had so desperately craved was revealed to him in all its black and white dynamic glory, full of speed and merciless grace. Jome slammed his fist on the table, overcome with emotion, for this was the very skill he had been looking for, the play of the greatest assassin. On the floor, among the rubble of gloomy luxury, lay fallen knights, their armor dimly gleaming and their blood spreading in dark spots. The chat was filled with general amazement and suspicion. What kind of unimaginable protection is this? Do we, the unworthy, really dare to witness such a thing? Are you cheating, you scoundrel? The assassin, seemingly oblivious to the general shock and accusations of cheating, merely turned around and casually said, "What are you so surprised about?" Assassin's mockingly calm tone rang out above the general din. "If you don't like it, I'll turn off the stream." Bye. His gaze, full of indifference, only slid over the angry messages, but there was hidden irritation in it. The spectators, instead of the expected submission, only showered him with pleas and reproaches. But suddenly something else caught his attention. All 6 current viewers had somehow signed up. The numbers on the screen confirmed this absurd observation. "Not bad," he muttered to himself. An unexpected, deafening explosion thundered very close, forcing the assassin to turn around sharply. His feet were already sliding across the floor, preparing for battle, while the chat was jubilant, anticipating the fight with the boss. A powerful, sweeping blow shaking the air passed by, leaving only a residual whirlwind in its wake. But the assassin was lightning fast, his silhouette only blurred in the air, avoiding a direct hit. An explosive laugh pierced the space. It was the boss himself, Ittori, whose malicious grin and mace in his hand foreshadowed a serious threat. The assassin rushed forward like a shadow, his movements so fast that the air around him warped, and now his weapon was already describing a deadly arc, aiming at the enemy, who seemed to have frozen for a moment. The blow hit its target, but only dealt minor damage, only -5 HP, like the touch of a feather. A fleeting look of surprise, rare for such a powerful being, flashed across the boss's face, but it was quickly replaced by a familiar predatory smile, full of hidden threat. "The damage is barely getting through," flashed through Assassin's mind, confirming his fears. This was a real boss in front of him. He even managed to throw a question into the chat, as if it were a normal training session. But the answer came from the boss himself, threateningly swinging his mace. A crushing blow came down from above, creating a whirlwind of destruction around itself, seeking to crush the assassin. But the hero was like Mercury. Dodging the deadly mace, he instantly counterattacked, leaving behind only blurred outlines. However, his attacks were mere drops in the ocean. The boss, shrugging off another blow, burst into laughter when a timer suddenly appeared, warning of mission failure if the target was not destroyed within 5 minutes, leaving the assassin in genuine shock. The hero, however, did not lose heart. instantly realizing the critical nature of the situation. The boss, however, mockingly added fuel to the fire, confident of his victory. The assassin's eyes showed a bitter understanding. The previous tactics would not lead to the goal. At that moment, it was as if a voice from outside sounded, suggesting a solution. Concentrate all forces on one vulnerable point in order to maximize damage. And the hero, accepting this challenge, unleashed a swift, concentrated blow on the enemy. The new blow staggered the boss, his health plummeting. The strategy had proven correct. This confirmed the guess. It was necessary to hit accurately, without missing, so that every blow would matter. Rage distorted the enemy's face as he felt a real threat. Time was running out mercilessly, but the hero could not allow himself to stop. Every moment counted. Once again, the assassin pierced the enemy's defense, and the force of the blow shook the boss himself. However, the enemy did not give up, trying to seize the initiative and snatch the weapon from the hero's hands. He rushed forward, screaming, demanding that he take back what he considered his. But the assassin did not retreat. In response to the impudence, the hero struck the boss with his knee, causing him to double over in pain. Pain pierced the enemy's body. Another 100 health points were irretrievably lost. Then came more blows, each of which took away hundreds of HP. The assassin, like a whirlwind, unleashed a hail of precise and devastating attacks on the boss. There was only one thing left to do: the final, decisive blow. The seconds were ticking away on the timer, bringing the denouement closer, and a bloody mess reigned all around. All the hero's strength and speed were concentrated in one deadly attack. The entire mansion seemed to shake from this unimaginable power. But even after receiving such a blow, Otori's mad gaze only hardened, revealing his implacable hatred. He croaked curses, clinging to life, but something even more dangerous lurked in his madness. And suddenly, in the midst of the battle, everything disappeared, replaced by a bright window of the virtual world. Mission accomplished. The world around was quiet and calm. Only the rare lights of houses shone in the darkness of the night, far from any danger. The hand on the mouse froze, and the echo of the fight he had just experienced sounded in his head. The hero, who turned out to be an ordinary guy named Jiwan, couldn't contain his jubilation. He became the first to complete this mission. News of his incredible feat instantly spread throughout gaming communities, causing a storm of surprise and disbelief. But the reality of the game didn't let go so easily. The cracked walls of the mansion still retained the echoes of the battle. Otori, bleeding and consumed by madness, cursed again, refusing to admit defeat. Then he went to extreme measures, calling on ancient magic, which began to manifest on the floor in mysterious patterns. Jiwan realized with horror what was happening. This spell was forbidden even in the darkest books. Blood-red seals flared up around, creating a barrier from which there was no escape. In an instant, everything was swallowed up by a blinding, incinerating flash, leaving no chance for survival. The blast wave threw him away, tearing the space around him into thousands of pieces. He struggled to his feet, realizing that Otori, that madman, had used self-destruction magic to take him away with him. But what is this? On the horizon, under an ominous, bloody moon, the silhouettes of unknown enemies appeared. Rage and despair mixed in his gaze. He couldn't believe that everything had turned out this way. All he could do was run, dodging the deadly rays and voices calling, "Catch the assassin!" Under cover of darkness, through the icy mist of the forest, he rushed away, feeling his strength leaving him. And when it seemed that things couldn't get any worse, the heavens opened up, revealing to the world something truly terrifying. He clung to life with all his might, every breath causing sharp pain, but he couldn't give up. Step by step, through unbearable torment, he continued his desperate path, seeking salvation. His gaze, full of determination, darted to the sky, where an ancient power lurked in the full moon. And then, on the top of a rocky mountain, illuminated by the cold moonlight, a barely discernible silhouette appeared. His eyes flashed with a furious fire, and from the depths of his soul, a powerful stream burst forth, shaking the surrounding area. As dawn broke through the mountain ranges, gilding the skies, the world around seemed to freeze, acquiring a fragile calm. Exhausted, he lay on the riverbank, his body lifeless among fallen leaves and morning dew. The water gently washed his wounds, washing away the blood and dust of the previous night, but consciousness was in no hurry to return. Every movement he made would have required incredible effort if he had been able to move, but his body was motionless. But the peace was short-lived. A dark figure appeared from the thicket of the forest, silently gliding towards him. A gloved hand carefully lifted from the ground a shining golden sign, a symbol of unknown power. A mysterious smile touched the stranger's lips as he looked at the acquired artifact, foreshadowing great changes. Suddenly, the narrative stopped, transporting us into the world of the game interface, full of commentary and bewilderment. The player's sarcastic remarks were mixed with the vain remarks of the genius observing the proceedings. Returning to his incarnation, the hero raised his eyes to the sky, asking a silent question. What now? A system message showed him the way. He should find a certain Christina in the city tavern. Without delay, obeying the call of the plot, he headed to a noisy tavern, where new discoveries and encounters awaited him. There was a buzz of activity inside. Laughter, the clink of mugs, and echoes of carefree conversation filled the smoky air. His gaze immediately fell on the girl behind the counter. It was clear that she was that very Christina. Beautiful and focused, she raised her head, asking with a hint of weariness, "Client? What do you want?" His gaze immediately fell on the girl behind the counter. It was clear she was the very same Christina. Beautiful and focused, she raised her head, asking with a hint of weariness, "Client, what would you like?" He met her gaze with a slight smirk, as if already anticipating the game, and answered mysteriously that he wanted a lot. Meanwhile, his glove clenched the intricate emblem, and inside he heard a slight internal sigh at these automatic greetings. Suddenly, something caught Christina's eye that made her heart skip a beat and her pupils dilate in shock. The man slowly placed his glass on the counter as if measuring time. The tension grew, and Christina, with growing anxiety, demanded, "Who are you?" He responded to her with unperturbed calm, offering his services, but her distrust only increased, and she demanded specifics. Suddenly, his eyes flashed an ominous red light, and his words sounded like a sentence. "With his killing skills." A shadow of recognition crossed her face, and she breathlessly whispered, "Could it be you are that mercenary from the West?" A smile touched his lips again, as he asked with a touch of vanity if she had heard of him. Legends about him were whispered everywhere. They said that for money he was capable of anything, and his fame was as boundless as the rain of coins. But there were other rumors about his supposed connections with secret societies, which he neither confirmed nor denied. Christina, having gathered her courage, suggested introducing herself first, in order to at least somehow unravel this tangle. The man nodded silently, agreeing with the proposal, his gaze sliding around the room. At that very moment, a system prompt appeared in front of him, asking him to enter a name for the character. A heated exchange of opinions immediately began in the chat, ridiculing his real name, Zizyun Seojun. The system displayed his profile, and the comments continued to discuss whether it was too dangerous to use his real name. He thoughtfully uttered one word, simple but full of meaning: nameless, and confirmed his choice. The chat immediately exploded with more ridicule, considering the name to be complete nonsense. But for him, nameless was not just a name, but a whole trend from his past life, mysterious and liberating from unnecessary obligations. Her gaze pierced him, demanding answers about the fate of the owner of the mysterious brooch. The nameless one's voice was distant as he spoke of the burial at the Western Pier, and a flicker of understanding flickered in her eyes. With these words, she returned the brooch to him as a key to future meetings, to a possible connection between their worlds. The nameless one ended up with the Signal Stone, an artifact that promised to be a bridge between reality and the unknown. Her barely noticeable smile conveyed anticipation, a readiness to share this path, full of dangers and opportunities. Under a golden sunset, he left the mansion, carrying with him not only the object, but also a new promise in the air. Leaning tiredly against the wall, he felt the tension of the day recede, and the chat was already discussing his new, mysterious name. With an ironic smile, he confirmed, Nameless is his new alter ego, inviting viewers to fill in its essence themselves. While the chat exploded with delight at the perfect name for an assassin, Nameless decided it was time to end his first broadcast. The last rays of sun were breaking through the foliage, painting the world in farewell tones as his virtual world prepared to shut down. "Bye-bye, great first stream," the messages screamed, and Nameless, embarrassed, only quietly said goodbye. The awkwardness of the moment was off the charts when, as a newbie, he stumbled over a simple question about ending the broadcast, prompting a barrage of ridicule from his fans. Reality enveloped him again, transforming fantasy landscapes into the flickering lights of a modern city. With a flick of his finger, he ended the broadcast, knowing that all 6 viewers had been watching with bated breath until the last second. It was funny to think about the nicknames that flashed in the chat. Disabled Man on a White Horse, Yellowtail, his constant companions. Suddenly, stunned, he realized something amazing. The chat continued to live even after the broadcast had ended. The phone screen lit up, revealing a never-ending stream of messages, everyone trying to express their opinion on Nameless. A satisfied smile blossomed on his face. The audience's reaction had exceeded all expectations, and his thoughts were already racing to future, even more exciting streams. But suddenly a sharp voice calling him Kim Tae-woo interrupted his dreams, tearing him out of the world of fantasy and causing him to drop the phone. The irritated brother asked where his manners had gone, while Tae-woo, confused, tried to understand what was happening to his virtual world. As Tae-woo stared anxiously at the screen, the world around him seemed to freeze in anticipation of an answer. Suddenly, a pop-up ad appeared on the phone screen, announcing the start of a game stream. Realization dawned on Tae-woo, and he finally understood the reason for the game's strange behavior. His brother, Kim Tae-sung, caught Tae-woo's eye and immediately turned his attention to what was happening, looking suspiciously at his phone. The screen displayed a post with an intriguing headline about a newbie who easily defeated all the enemies in the training mode. An indignant Tae-woo couldn't understand what kind of streamer would start his first playthrough on the day of his debut, and even use other people's achievements for self-promotion. Tae-woo's gaze slid over the comments where fans mentioned assassin, and his brother guessed that it was the mysterious viewer. Tae-woo, with a satisfied smile, predicted his brother's quick success. 30 recommendations are no joke, and if that happens, his stream will end up on the front page, attracting crowds of new subscribers. Tae-woo told his brother to rest, hinting at his new status as a professional. But his brother simply waved him off, worried about Tae-woo's sleep. That night, when the house was silent, Tae-sung lay in bed, his phone still in his hands. And then he saw 30 recommendations had already been collected. His eyes widened in surprise. Slightly shocked, he decided to postpone the showdown until the morning, turning off his phone. But even in the darkness of the screen, his world was already shining with new, dazzling colors. The next day, the city awoke to the bright rays of the sun, and with it, Tae-sun's new world. As Tae-woo predicted, the recommendations exceeded 30, opening new horizons for Tae-sung. The topic was so heated that the controversy surrounding his stream was quite heated, but Tae-sung maintained an outward calm. However, something in one of the comments caught his attention. The topic of the nasty new level 10 bot and the strange mention of its personality attracted attention. While the regular bot, created in Shin Hae-young's image, waited patiently, the new bot mercilessly dealt with anyone who stood in its way. The new bot turned out to be extremely aggressive, mocking with a cynical grin anyone who dared to resist it. Players in the chat immediately began discussing this personality, suggesting that it was created based on the winner, Shin Hae-young. Seojun, reading the comments, felt a slight irritation, foreshadowing imminent trouble. Could this behavior of the bot be a response to its own rudeness towards Suyu when he tried a few more fights? And suddenly, among the many guesses, one comment pierced him. Isn't this the nameless one? How could they have guessed it was him? Was Assassin Jojo's intuition kicking in again? Seojun leaned back in his chair, admitting that this kind of attention to him had come as a complete surprise. However, his inner voice, wise and cautious, reminded him that sudden abundance rarely brings anything good. It was knowledge he had learned from the cruel lessons of his past life, a warning deeply ingrained in his soul. He stood up, letting the past whisper to him of the inevitability of balance. His gaze fell on the VR headset, waiting for his immersion into the virtual world. He just had to keep going, day after day, gradually moving forward, as he always did. His channel, Ziziyun Seojun, proudly displayed 432 subscribers. But in reality, only 6 of them regularly watched his live broadcasts, which made him smile. As he pressed the coveted Start Stream button, he wondered with a slight trepidation how many people would join him today. A new world opened up before him, the majestic city of Altion, shrouded in a haze of intrigue. A city divided into 4 unique quarters, each of which hid its own secrets. A wide variety of personalities lived here, from the aristocrats of the royal quarter to the shadows of the lower quarter. A place where players could either take on carefully planned assassination orders or simply commit lawlessness. And then Sojun, in the guise of a mysterious mercenary, greeted his viewers, appearing from the shadows. The first responses from the virtual crowd were not long in coming, bringing Sojun not just income, but the first living confirmation of his presence in the game world. For a moment, a thoughtful look flashed in his gaze. Was it worth delving deeper into explanations, or was it better to simply trust the moment? Meanwhile, the chat was already generously sharing tactical advice, reminding them of the importance of precise strikes at the enemy's most vulnerable points. The live stream of messages, where congratulations were mixed with streams of irony, created a unique atmosphere for the live broadcast. Looking around at the flashing nicknames, Sojin suddenly felt the weight of many eyes on him, unfamiliar but attentive. The system message on the screen clearly showed the number, 327 spectators, a number that made Sojin's heart tremble slightly. This figure was 3 times greater than his modest expectations, making him realize the scale of the attention he had attracted. Standing in the middle of a busy marketplace, he asked a question that echoed throughout the virtual space. "So, what shall we do today?" The responses were immediate, turning the chat into a seething cauldron of suggestions, from displays of strength to tests of dexterity. Among these calls and jokes, there were also more serious ones, suggesting to start with a simple exploration of the city, or even a lead on potential orders. A slight, almost imperceptible smile lit up his face as he made his decision, as if anticipating something intriguing. "Well, to warm up then, why not go through your pockets?" he suggested, plunging into the bustle of the market crowd. Amid the hubbub of merchants and children's laughter, Sojun slipped into the crowd, becoming one with its flow. But then a rude passerby appeared on the way, unceremoniously pushing people aside with shouts and shoves. "Hey, are you asking for trouble?" His voice boomed as he collided with Sojun, not noticing his agility. However, Sojun had already slipped past, his movement so fast that hardly anyone had time to notice him. The hand, hidden in the shadow of the cloak, made a barely perceptible lightning-fast movement. A satisfied grin lit up his face as a well-stuffed wallet emerged from the shadow of his cloak, symbolizing a new, successful deal. The audience cheered, and the chat exploded with a stream of messages demanding more, and even suggesting more risky scenarios involving the guard's pursuit. The bags of loot multiplied, and the thought of a luxurious estate seemed not so distant, until a sharp shout tore him from his pleasant thoughts. Pleasant dreams were interrupted by a sharp voice that demanded an account of his actions. A hand fell on his shoulder, and another bandit, mockingly looking at the loot, reminded him of the unwritten rules. The hero showed the small bag in confusion, as if not understanding what was so special about it. But everything was clear to them, and the impudent faces demanded their share, forcing the hero to think about the strange order of this world. The spectators, as always, were furious, egging him on to a new battle and demanding that he show his true power. New goals flashed through his mind: to become a lord, to defeat the disassembler boss, and to clear the market, all for the sake of the coveted estate. And so, with a determined smile, the hero announces a new mission. Today, the streets will be cleared of bandits. The audience is delighted again, although some doubt his knowledge of tactics, while the hero himself ponders the intricacies of parrying. Meanwhile, our hero is planning a new strategy, somewhere else, in a luxurious estate. One of the guards was on duty, vigilantly inspecting the halls. Suddenly, there was a sharp sound as someone's hand awkwardly brushed against the massive chandelier. It was streamer Alpaca, a veteran with tens of thousands of viewers, attempting a dangerous challenge, and he realized he had failed. He watched with a sense of foreboding as the wax slowly dripped from the candle, counting down the final seconds until his exposure. A drop fell on the guard's head, and he, looking up, said with irritation, "Rat boy!" But it was too late. Alpaca was spotted, and his desperate attempt to attack only confirmed his failure. And our hero, returning to the streets, suffered another setback, falling into the clutches of bandits for the umpteenth time. A total failure, the system status read. And for the 4th time, his mission had turned into a fiasco. Clearing the sector of the Drine seemed like an impossible task, since, as the chat said, the overlords were invincible by default. The overlords were a criminal syndicate that terrorized the 4th district of Altion, the real villains of the game. And at the head of this kingdom of evil stood the queen, the lord of the Spire of Etheris, whose power inspired awe. But the queen was not alone in her absolute majesty. The head of the king's followers, a powerful vassal, was a mysterious lord, and while he was doing his dark deeds, another treacherous player was playing his own game on the board of fate. It was the disassembler boss, a powerful and ruthless leader whose power knew no bounds, who once declared, "This is my way." He was known as Drake, an elusive adversary whose name was whispered with apprehension in the darkest corners of Altion. It was almost impossible to find him. Drake appeared only by chance, in one of 10 bases, like a shadow slipping out of one's hands. But our hero, Honeyjammer, did not give up, again and again acquiring cards that could show the way to the cherished goal. And so he opens the card again, hoping that luck will smile on him and Drake will finally show himself. The map pointed to the group, a seemingly simple point, but in the world of Altion, even this could be the key to great secrets. Suddenly, a flood of donations and messages flooded his screen with one insistent piece of advice. Switch to a fighter's style. Jammer, surprised but skeptical, merely laughed at the idea, knowing that mastering the fighting style in this game was considered impossible. However, the chat stubbornly insisted on the reality of this possibility, hinting at some secret known only to a small circle. He looked with distrust towards the sections of the community where the solution to this intriguing mystery might lie. A spark of excitement lit up his eyes. Could someone really have achieved the impossible in the world of Altion? Suddenly, Jammer, succumbing to impulse, declares that he is ready to do anything to master this style and even stream to victory. But then, embarrassed by his own audacity, he tries to laugh it off, saying that this is, of course, impossible, and thanks for the donations. The chat room erupted in laughter and messages, while Jammer only sighed in frustration, realizing he had been caught. He tries to clarify whether all this is real, but instead of an answer, he receives only ridicule and challenges from the angry crowd. Loser, pathetic, coward. The words flying at him from all sides only fuel his stubbornness. And then another donation, like a final push, forces him to accept the challenge, driving him into a corner. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the battle was already raging, foreshadowing a quick clash where destinies would intertwine in a bloody dance. As the protagonist moved through the narrow streets, surrounded by his temporary retinue, his thoughts wandered through the chat. Chat silently wondered, where were these shadows leading him? And what awaited him at the end of the road? He himself merely shrugged his shoulders, allowing events to carry him along, while the spectators wondered how he was going to fight without a weapon. Voices from the airwaves whispered of the difficulty of the task, of the reputation to be earned, and of the missions that led to the goal. But then the chat exploded, laughing at his naivety, at his ignorance of the world he found himself in. He didn't understand what the lords were or who they were at all, which only caused new streams of donations and sarcastic remarks. And these parries that everyone was talking about seemed like a completely alien concept to him. He only vaguely remembered mentions of Drake, but he couldn't put all the pieces of information together. Returning to reality, he understood that every choice he made would have its own, sometimes difficult consequences. But then a flash of insight. What if we didn't play by the rules, but simply solved the problem by force? Back in the game, he faced an immediate threat. Bandits demanded that he give everything the easy way. The brazen grin on their faces only confirmed their intentions, even including the stolen wallets. The chat was once again full of caustic jokes and cries of hunger, while players mocked his parrying skills. One of the bandits, losing his patience, poked him in the chest with his finger, demanding that he immediately part with the valuables. Another, mockingly, suggested that the boss teach the stubborn man a lesson, since words apparently don't get it. But then something changed in his gaze. The atmosphere around him thickened, foreshadowing a storm. Calmly and unperturbed, he asked a question that instantly confused them. By the way, do you know where Drake is? And only a mocking answer, are you crazy? Why should I blab to you? But his clenched fists spoke louder than any words. A sinister smile crossed his face, and he said, can't get it done without a punch? Negotiations are always easier with fists. And this phrase became a death sentence. Time slowed down, space became distorted. A lightning strike struck the first enemy. The enraged enemy, not expecting such audacity, rushed into battle, but his gaze was cold and calculating. The enemy's blade met not flesh, but a solid barrier. One precise blow and the fighter flew to the side. Horror froze in the other's eyes as he felt the power upon himself. The enemy seemed unable to believe that what was happening was real. A cry of despair burst from the chest of the next one, rushing with a sword. But this impulse was also met with imperturbable composure. Pain shot through his arm, paralyzing his movement. His eyes reflected not just a fight, but pure strategy. Each swing of the blade was a calculated dance of death. They fell one after another, not having time to realize their defeat. And so the battlefield fell silent, leaving only silent witnesses. He looked at the fallen, a slight smile playing on his face. The last survivor, wounded and humiliated, whispered a curse. Fear and despair distorted his features, but the answer that awaited him was not pity at all, but a cold, piercing question. Kai didn't wait. His angry, "Where is Drake?" sounded like a death sentence. A blade of cold steel, glowing red, fell on his neck, and Kai repeated, "Answer!" The system's bullying continued, but suddenly a piercing sound broke the silence. A wave of green energy crashed down on the hero, throwing him aside. A powerful blow that made the ears ring shook everything around. But Kai, having risen, had already extended his hand, and a frightened voice began to give out information. 13th Street, the largest group, he whispered, barely breathing. The system announced the victory indifferently, and Kai, looking away, simply left the battlefield. Throwing the dagger back, he looked around. The blade is a bit short. Do you have anything more serious? And then he found something he liked. A long, dangerous braid. The glass ceiling cracked under his impact, falling into pieces. He rushed down, straight into the crowd of opponents, leaving them no chance. A red light enveloped him as he raised his weapon, preparing for a merciless massacre. The scythe cut through the air, leaving behind a deadly trail. And now he stands on the ground, stained with blood, among fallen enemies. He towered over the carnage like an ancient god of war, watching over his victims. The developers are ruthless, Kai chuckled, looking at the 30 bodies around him. Ha ha ha, not bad, he said smugly, looking around. A new goal was already looming on the horizon, and Kai's gaze filled with icy determination. The blue blade cut through space, and many throwing knives rushed towards it. Knives whistled around him, their blades thirsting for flesh. But Kai stood firm. His gaze, sharp as steel, did not miss a single movement, not the slightest threat. The hand gripped the hilt of the sword tighter, preparing to repel the inevitable. A hail of blades rained down on him, but each blade met resistance, bouncing off with sparks. With lightning speed, he parried blow after blow, turning the enemy's attack into a powerless storm. A sinister figure towered over him, the one who had decided to challenge him in this ruined hall. A sly smile revealed sharp fangs, and new, deadly blades gleamed in his hands. Drake, the disassembler boss, reveled in the chaos, challenging Kai to a deadly game of reflection. An invisible force pushed forward hundreds of purple blades, filling the space around. It was a true squall, a wave of destruction capable of tearing apart anyone who dared to stand in its way. Even Kai felt the storm's heart tighten at the thought of the countless threats approaching. But he did not retreat, but merely turned his blade, creating a whirlwind that distorted reality itself. Red and purple mingled in a dance of power, each blow reflected with tripled force. And now, those same deadly knives that were flying towards him were now returning to their owner with frightening speed. One of them slid across Drake's face, leaving a trail of blood, but only increasing his rage. Kai, who parried even the most unimaginable attacks, only smiled slyly, enjoying his opponent's amazement. Recognizing the stranger's strength, Drake momentarily cast aside his arrogance, inquiring about the name of such a skilled fighter. In response, he received only the mysterious Nameless, which only added mystery to his already intriguing image. Unexpectedly, this answer only further affected the disassembler boss, causing him to wonder about the enemy's hidden powers. And then, with one last deep breath, Drake decided to throw everything he had into the fight, preparing for the decisive clash. Drake stood up straight, his weapon rattling with chains and filled with an ominous purple light, ready to fall upon the enemy. With lightning speed, the blade darted out, leaving behind only a blurry trail in the air. A heavy blow fell on the ground, raising clouds of dust and shaking the stone beneath their feet. But the boss was not so simple. With a deft movement, he dodged, and his cloak rose like wings. The red whirlwinds of chains came crashing down again, but the enemy seemed to be ready for every move, demonstrating astonishing agility. Drake's gaze slid across the battlefield, and the realization came. It was not only his strength, but also the enemy's unusual weapon that made him so formidable. The boss, standing before him, entangled in chains, clearly didn't fit into the framework of a typical stealth game, as if the developers themselves were calling for an open confrontation. With a sly, challenging grin, the disassembler boss invited Drake to begin the deadly dance. Without waiting for an answer, he rushed forward, his figure enveloped in a purple glow, foreshadowing the imminent assault. The blow hit with such force that the air around them crackled, and sparks scattered across space like stars. But Drake, gritting his teeth, met the blow with his blade, and the clash of two forces echoed like thunder. The enemy's chains came down from above like a rain of steel, and Drake had to parry each blow, barely keeping up. Desperately retreating, he repelled a hail of attacks, and the ground beneath his feet cracked from the monstrous energy. The spectators, watching the battle, screamed with delight and despair, amazed by Drake's flawless defense. A shadow of a smile flickered across Drake's face. This opponent was far more dangerous than all his previous trials combined. At that moment, the image of another warrior appeared in his mind, whose words about the key to survival pierced the darkness of the battle. Decisively dropping his defenses, Drake rushed forward, intending to close the distance and break through the boss's defense. But the boss, grinning, only tightened his grip on the sword's hilt, as if to say, "Do you think I'll give in to you so easily?" And then two wills, two blades, shrouded in the radiance of magic, collided, creating a whirlwind of destruction and fury. At that moment, Boss realized the truth of parrying. It only gave him a brief moment for a single counterattack, not a complete advantage against an enemy like Drake. He felt the hilt of the weapon in his palms, knowing that all he needed to do was deliver a single, precise blow. He repeated this movement thousands of times, honing it to perfection, until now, every stroke was a perfect dance. These weren't just blows. It was a strategy calculated down to the millimeter, like the placement of battle posts on a battlefield. Drake came down from above like a shadow, his power seemingly limitless. But the boss did not flinch. A crushing blow fell directly on the head, causing piercing pain and flying into bloody spray. The ground beneath his feet cracked, opening up from the monstrous force. But the boss had already adapted, turning the damage into an advantage. In virtual reality, where every parameter was different from what he was used to, he doubted his own abilities. But now, every movement, the footwork, the rotation of the body, the trajectory of the swing, all of this was embedded deep in his subconscious. The optimal position for a strike, for defense. For this technique, the physical body was not important, only the perfection of the movement. Drake roared and chains erupted from his shadows, aiming to tear his enemy to shreds. His face was contorted with rage, his fingers pointed at the boss, and his eyes read only one word: die! Deadly chains, shrouded in purple glow, rushed towards the boss, ready to devour him. But he parried again, creating a flash of energy that sent the chains flying. "This is fun," flashed through his mind, as each swing of his weapon became more furious and deadly. In these movements, in this battle, he found confirmation of everything he knew, all the skills of his past life. Drake's weapon crumbled into pieces, and the boss, enveloped in crimson light, prepared for the final decisive blow. A powerful column of energy erupted from his blade, piercing Drake and shaking the very earth. The screen flashed with a victory message, confirming the crushing defeat of Boss Drake and granting the first fragment of the mysterious order. Suddenly, the virtual world reminded him of itself, displaying a donation message from a certain assassin Jozo, causing the boss to blink in confusion. The change of scenery was so abrupt that his face reflected genuine surprise, as if he had just returned from another dimension.